Alright, let's look at question 7a. The question says board Q is there 4 kilometers away from P in the bearing of 50 degrees and R is there 4 kilometers away from Q in the bearing of 130 degrees. Draw a scale diagram. Roman 1 is draw a scale diagram by representing 1 kilometer of real distance by 1 centimeter. Okay, so first we'll start with marking point P. So here the point P is, let's mark the point P. Here the point P is, right. So what have they said? They have said board Q is there 4 kilometers away from P in the bearing of 50 degrees. So the moment we see the word bearing, what should we do? We should draw the north. So let's draw the north at P, the north direction. So this is the north. So they have said Q is in a bearing of 50 from P. So how do you measure the bearing? Whenever you measure bearing, your protractor 0 has to be on the north. So we have to rotate the protractor and bring in the origin. The place where all the lines meet should be at P, and the 0 of the protractor is on north and 50 degrees clockwise. So 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, we get here the 50. Let's mark that right here. And then we put the protractor aside and we'll draw the line which makes 50. And what's this angle? This clockwise angle, let's show like this, 0, 50. Since it's bearing, I'll use 3 digits. So point Q is anywhere on this line, but they have been specific. They have said where should the point Q be? Board Q is there 4 kilometers away from P. So since the scale is 1 centimeter showing 1 kilometer, I have to take the ruler and measure 4 centimeters along this 50 degree bearing line and mark point Q. Let's do that. That's 4 centimeter. All right, my tool is working quite good. All right, so that is 4 centimeter point right here. So here the Q is. So let's mark that. Here the Q is. All right, we are done with the first fact. What's next? We have been told R is there 4 kilometers away from Q in the bearing of 130 degrees. Okay, there is an object called R. It is in a bearing of 130 degrees from Q. So what do we do? The moment we hear the word bearing, a north should be drawn. So at Q, we got to draw a north. And measure 130 degrees. They have said so. As I said earlier, the 0 of the protractor should be on the north. Now they are saying bearing of R from Q is 130 degrees. So let's measure 130. 0, 10, 20, it goes like this till 130 here. Is the 130 point. And move the protractor, get the ruler and draw the line. So this is the line which makes 130 degrees. Clockwise 130 degrees. So the line, the point R, the object R has to be somewhere on the on the line what we drew now. So where exactly, let's say, let's check for that. They have said R is there 4 kilometers away from Q in the bearing of 130 degrees. So along this 130 degree bearing line, we have to measure 4 centimeters. Let's do that. So we'll have to take the straight edge. Straight edge is the fancy name we give to the ruler you use. So we got to measure 4 centimeters. Make sure that you keep the, since I'm using an online tool, it's quite hard for me to do the alignment. But when you're doing in your physical answer script, you have to keep the ruler properly on the line to measure the 4 centimeter. So here the 4 centimeter line is, the point is. So let's mark it 4 centimeter. It's quite hard for me to mark with this online tool. Sorry for that. Somewhere here 4 centimeter, that's R. And make sure that you put these distances. So P to Q, it's 4 centimeter. The real distance is 4 kilometer, but when you do a scale diagram, what you write is the scale diagram distance. Q to R, it is 4 centimeter. Right. So we are done with the scale diagram. Roman 2. Write the above scale as a ratio. So what is the scale as a ratio? The scale they have suggested us to use is, so make sure, one more thing in the scale diagram, in the top of the scale diagram, somewhere in the side, you have to write the scale you use. So 1 centimeter represents 1 kilometer. That is the scale. You can write scale and say 1 centimeter represents 1 kilometer. This information is mandatory. In a scale diagram, you have to mention the scale that you are using. In Roman 2, they want us to write this scale in the form of a ratio. How do we do that? So, the scale diagram and the actual. So, what have they said? 1 centimeter represents 1 kilometer. Now, if you have to write as a ratio, both should be in same units. So, the actual distance also should be in same centimeter. So, 1 centimeter is representing, what is 1 kilometer in centimeters? First, convert 1 kilometer to meter. How do you do that? 1 kilometer is equal to how many meters? 1 times 1000. 1000. Right? Because 1 kilometer has 1000 meters. So 1 kilometer means 1000 meters. So what is 1000 meters in centimeters? How do you convert meter to centimeter? Multiply by 100. So 1000 times 100, that gives you 100,000. So 1 cm represents 100,000, or rather, I used an extra zero here, sorry. So 100,000. Centimeter. So now you can write as ratio. What is the ratio? 1 is to 100,000 is the scale in the form of a ratio. Roman 3. Describe the location of P from R. Describe the location of P from R. What do you do? For that you have to, you can draw the north